Otranto, one of the most catastrophic and consequential sieges in the entire history of Christendom. It is the 12th of August, 1480, and the sun has barely cleared the Adriatic horizon when the drums begin. A low, rolling thunder that bounces off the limestone cliffs and fills the streets of the town with a dread that reaches into the bones. 18,000 Ottoman soldiers pour through the shattered southern gate, their banners the color of blood against a pale morning sky. The smell of burning timber and scorched stone coats every breath. The crunch of broken masonry beneath iron boots fills every silence. 18,000 against 800. A city of merchants, fishermen, priests, and farmers against the greatest military machine on earth. The odds are not merely unfavorable, they are insane. But the Ottomans have made a mistake they cannot yet see. They have herded their quarry into the one place where numbers mean nothing. Into the cathedral, against the walls, into the presence of men who have already decided they will not yield. The hunters have become the hunted. What none of the Ottoman commanders understand as they drag the 800 survivors up the hill of Minerva is that they are about to make these men immortal. The swords are already drawn. The executioner is already moving. What he cannot know is that in killing them, he will preserve something far more durable than any empire. 800 men kneel in the light. The trap is already set. The year is 1453, and the world is cracking apart. The Ottoman Empire does not merely march, it devours. For a century, it has consumed kingdoms the way fire consumes dry grass. Completely, without hesitation, leaving behind only ash and silence. From the ancient steppes of Anatolia to the storied plains of the Balkans, fear spreads like rising floodwater, swallowing everything it touches. The empire's most recent achievement is the one that silenced the prayers of an entire civilization. Constantinople, the 1,000-year capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, the city that called itself the center of the world, fell in a single day to the armies of Sultan Mehmed II. The last Christian emperor died in the rubble of his own walls. Before Constantinople, there was Thessaloniki, there was Sofia, there was the ancient fortress city of Edirne, swallowed whole and made into the Sultan's capital. Athens fell. The Duchy of Athens, the city that gave the world philosophy, reduced to an Ottoman province. Serbia, which had resisted for generations, crushed, finally, at the Second Battle of Kosovo. Bosnia, Wallachia, the entire northern Aegean coast. Name after name after name. Each one landed like a hammer. Each silence that followed was louder than the last. Where were the great powers of Europe? Venice negotiated, Genoa calculated, Hungary sent letters, the Pope issued proclamations. The Holy Roman Emperor convened councils. Councils produced prayers. Prayers produced nothing. The world had 1,000 chances to form a wall, and chose every single time to form a committee instead. The Ottoman tide rose because every kingdom watched the kingdom next to it drown first. And yet, in one jagged, defiant sliver of the Western Balkans, in a land of black mountains and violent rivers, and passes so narrow a cart cannot turn around in them, something refused to die. This land smells of pine resin and cold stone. Its eagles nest on peaks no army has ever crossed. Its castles cling to cliffsides as though they grew there, as though the rock and the fortress are the same organism, as though even the landscape has decided to resist. This is the land that gave the world a name history has never forgotten. A name whispered in the courts of Europe with something between wonder and desperate hope. That name is Skanderbeg. His mother named him George Castrioti. History gave him the name Skanderbeg, a corruption of Iskander Bey, meaning Lord Alexander. And the weight of that name is not accidental. He was born around 1405, the fourth son of a minor Albanian lord named John Castrioti. His real name tied him to his blood, his mountains, his people. His famous name tied him to the memory of Alexander the Great. Both names were true. He was the Dragon of Albania. He was the champion of Christendom. He was the Sword of Christ. And the Ottomans had other names for him, names they did not say aloud. He was taken at 9 years old. That is the fact, stated plainly, and it should not be softened. Ripped from his father's castle as a hostage, political collateral for his father's forced submission to the Porte, he did not choose the road east. He was placed on it. The term for what happened to him is one the Ottomans used with great bureaucratic precision: devshirme, the collection of boys. He was a boy. He was collected. His family watched the dust settle behind the column until it disappeared. What awaited him in the Sultan's court was, paradoxically, excellence. The Ottomans were not cruel masters to boys who showed talent. They were transformative ones. And George Castrioti, this Albanian mountain boy, showed talent that could not be ignored. He absorbed their language as though he had always known it. He mastered their cavalry tactics, their siege doctrine, their use of terrain. He studied their psychology, their chains of command, their weaknesses disguised as strengths. He rose through their ranks with a speed that made older officers uncomfortable. He was given command. He was given glory. He was given the title of Bey and the governorship of a district in his own homeland. A bitter irony so sharp it must have cut him every single day. But glory built on servitude is hollow. He served for 20 years. 20 years of watching his homeland administered by the empire that had taken him from it. 20 years of perfect performance in a uniform that was not his. Then, in 1443, the moment came. A Hungarian crusade under János Hunyadi pushed south into the Balkans, and Skanderbeg was ordered to the front. He never arrived. He deserted. He rode hard. He returned. He arrived at his ancestral castle of Kruye not as an Ottoman bey, but as George Castrioti, son of John, and he raised his banner, the black double-headed eagle, on a red field over the castle walls for the first time. He did not return quietly. He returned like a fire. Before his men, before God, before the mountains themselves, he swore an oath that had no conditions. Never again would Albanian soil bend to the Sultan's will. Never again. The years that followed were an answer to that oath written in blood. 24 years of resistance. At least 25 engagements, most of them against forces 3, 4, 5 times his own. The Pope called him Athleta Christi. Venice called him their shield. The Ottomans, who had made him, trained him, elevated him, called him something else entirely. The Sultan said his name, not with admiration, but with the cold fury of a man who cannot believe the tool he sharpened has been turned against his own hand. The blow that preceded Otranto was personal in a way that went beyond politics. The man who eventually led the assault on Otranto, Gedik Ahmed Pasha, did not begin as the enemy. He began as a figure who understood Skanderbeg's world intimately, who had studied the same campaigns, who came from the same imperial machinery. But Skanderbeg himself was already dead by 1468, worn to nothing by decades of fighting. It is his legacy, his successor state, his Albania, that faces the blade at Otranto. And the blade is wielded by men who emerged from the same forge. Gedik Ahmed Pasha's most recent campaign before Otranto had shattered resistance in the Aegean. He had not been stopped. He had moved with the efficiency of a mechanism. His army did not march, it processed. And the defeat of any organized resistance in his path had made him certain of something that certainty almost always makes dangerous. He believed the next conquest was already complete. What turned him toward Italy was not ambition alone, it was calculation. Gold, the promise of Rome. The absolute certainty that the fractured Italian city-states could not unite against him in time. He had been offered, through proxies, intelligence suggesting the southern coast was thinly defended, that the Pope would send diplomacy before soldiers, that Milan and Naples and Florence would argue while he moved. The betrayal that enabled this had roots in exhaustion and terror. Men who had once sworn oaths to resist had been ground down by decades of war, by the fall of every neighbor, by the simple arithmetic of survival. The specific information about Otranto's coastal defenses, the location of the weakest sea wall, the garrison strength, the supply situation, reached the Ottoman fleet through channels built from fear and ambition in equal measure. This was not random evil. This was what siege and dread do to human beings over time. The betrayal cut deeper than the walls that fell. Gedik Ahmed did not simply use this intelligence. He led the fleet himself. He stood at the bow. He made his confidence visible, performative, because confidence in a commander is itself a weapon. It moves men forward when their feet would otherwise stop. He believed the message this sent was unmistakable. This is not a raid. This is a beginning. This is the opening move of something that ends in Rome. His men believed him. His fleet of over 100 ships believed him. And no one in that entire armada entertained, even for a breath, the possibility that 800 people inside a cathedral could become the hinge on which the whole enterprise swings. The Ottoman war machine that descends on Otranto in the summer of 1480 is a creature of terrifying precision. The Janissaries move at the front, elite infantry, stone-faced, trained since childhood, who do not break and do not beg. The Sipahi cavalry ripple along the flanks like a dark tide, each horse groomed to perfection, each rider wearing armor that catches the light. The artillery train, great bronze cannons that can throw iron balls through city walls as though they were paper, rolls forward on specially constructed carriages. Drums. That is what the people of the surrounding villages remember first. The drums. Then the trumpets, layered over each other until the sound becomes a single wall of noise. Then the column itself, stretching back to the horizon. Fields emptied. Bells rang in churches with locked doors. The old left prayers under stones and carried nothing else. More than 18,000 men before the city walls. Gedik Ahmed surveyed Otranto from the deck of his command vessel and spoke the judgment of a man who has never been surprised. This will be finished before the harvest moon. What he does not know, what he cannot see, is that inside that cathedral, 800 people are deciding something that no general can command. They are deciding to become a wall. And walls, properly placed, can stop armies that nothing else can. The Archbishop of Otranto, Stefano Agricoli, received the news of the fleet's approach the way a man receives a sentence he already suspected, with the stillness of someone who has already grieved the outcome and is now free to act without fear. He did not rage. He did not despair. He walked to the window of the Archbishop's palace and looked south, toward the Adriatic, and something settled in his expression. Not resignation, but a kind of granite clarity. Whatever was coming, he would meet it on his feet, on his terms, in his church. He called his people together. He told them the truth. "We have 800, he said, perhaps fewer, who can fight with weapons. They bring thousands with cannons, cavalry, the best infantry in the world." He paused. Then, "But this is our cathedral, and this altar does not move." This was not strategy in the military sense. This was something the Ottomans had no counter for, a people who had removed survival from the equation. For 11 days before the final assault, the people of Otranto reinforced the cathedral doors, barricaded the nave with pews and stonework, and prepared to hold a building against an army. The priests organized the defense. The older men managed what weapons existed. Women passed water and tended the wounded. Children carried stones to the upper windows. What the Ottoman commanders cannot see, what they have no framework to perceive, is that this is not a military defense. This is a sacramental one. The people inside the cathedral are not hoping to win. They have already decided what they will not do. What none of them know is that their decision will echo for 5 centuries. Before the final assault, a young man of perhaps 16 asked the man beside him, an old fisherman who had survived 2 previous Ottoman raids, whether he was afraid. The fisherman said, "I have been afraid every day since they burned the harbor. But afraid is not the same as done." Agricoli walked among his people before the end. He did not make speeches. He did not promise glory or rescue or a miraculous reversal. He said something simpler. Think of the children who will remember this. Think of what you want them to remember. The night before the cathedral fell, Agricoli stood at the highest window and looked down at the Ottoman encampment spread across the plain below. Somewhere in that sea of fires, the commander who would give the order was sleeping, or not sleeping, calculating what morning would bring. He had 18,000 men and every earthly advantage. The Archbishop had 800 people and a locked door. War turns calculations into prayers, certainty into ash. When the Ottomans had built their certainty to its fullest, they did not see what was directly in front of them. People who had chosen what kind of death to die, which is the only form of victory that cannot be taken away. The stars wheeled overhead. In the dark before the final dawn, the 800 took their positions around the altar. The Ottoman troops entered the city at first light on the 12th of August. Scouts moved through the outer streets. They found the city largely empty, looted of valuables, the population apparently fled. An officer reported, "The cathedral holds survivors, but they are few. This will be finished within the hour." The main body of soldiers poured in through the broken gate. Officers relaxed, some making wagers on how long it would take. Then, something changed. The soldiers nearest the cathedral doors went quiet first. Then, a stillness spread outward. Even the horses felt it. 3 horses refused to advance and had to be led past the cathedral square by force. The doors did not open. Battering rams brought up. The doors held longer than they should have, reinforced with everything the cathedral contained, with stone from the altar rail and timber from the pulpit, with iron taken from the bell chamber. When the doors finally gave, what the Ottoman soldiers encountered inside was not a group of terrified survivors pleading for mercy. It was a wall of people facing them, standing, without weapons, silent. The offer came through a translator. Convert, accept Islam, live. The answer was given not by the Archbishop alone, but collectively, by 800 voices that gave the same answer. Antonio Primaldo, a tailor and an old man, spoke first. "We believe in Jesus Christ, and we are ready to die for him." Every voice in the cathedral answered behind him. They were taken to the Hill of Minerva, each one beheaded. 800. The executioner worked all day. Antonio Primaldo was first. According to those who witnessed it, his body remained upright after the blow, kneeling in the grass, and could not be pushed over until every other person present had been executed. History does not require us to explain this. It only requires us to record it. The commander turned back toward his camp. He had taken the city. He had silenced the cathedral. He had removed every obstacle to his march northward. He looked back once at the hill. 800 dead. A campaign trail to Rome opened. What he could not see, what none of them could see in that moment, is that he had just created 800 doorways through which something would walk that no army could ever kill. He does not celebrate. Gedik Ahmed Pasha consolidates his hold on Otranto and begins preparations for the advance northward. But the hill behind him is not silent. The silence of that hill is the loudest thing in Italy. His soldiers work in the days that follow. They patrol, they fortify, they wait for reinforcements that are slower than promised. The campaign north stalls, then slows, then does not move at all. Something has gone wrong that no battle report can name. The army of Naples forms, then others join. The Pope does not send prayers this time, he sends soldiers. And the news from Otranto spreads north and west with a speed that outpaces any courier. 800 people were offered life and chose death rather than denial. Gedik Ahmed stands at the top of the city wall one evening and looks north. He knows the army gathering in Naples is large. He knows his reinforcements from Constantinople are delayed. He knows that what seemed inevitable 2 months ago has acquired an edge of uncertainty he did not plan for. He says nothing to his officers, but his officers see his face. The answer he cannot find is not military. This is the thing that will stop him, and it is not a wall. The news reached Naples within days, Rome within a week, and the courts of France and Spain within a month. 800 common people, merchants, fishermen, tailors, priests, had been offered survival at the price of faith. and refused, every one of them. 800 against 18,000, and the 800 won the argument. The numbers traveled ahead of the story. Scholars in Naples calculated the ratio and read their calculations twice. Some called it a miracle. Others called it the clearest example of what human will can accomplish against overwhelming force. Hope flared in places that had not permitted hope in years. In Constantinople, Sultan Mehmed II received the news of the stalled campaign with the expression of a man who is very good at hiding his thoughts and slightly less good at hiding his eyes. He dismissed his attendants. He walked to his private chambers. He stood at the window that looked west, always west, toward the land that kept not dying the way conquered things were supposed to die. The name on his lips was not the name of a commander he could replace. It was the name of something he could not make a plan against. He asked himself a question that the chronicles do not record, but that every detail of what followed implies. Can an empire truly break a people who decide that breaking is the one thing they will not do? He would send more armies. He would send Gedik Ahmed back. He would try again. But in that private room, looking west, doubt entered his heart. Not doubt about his power, but doubt about power itself and what it cannot accomplish. Military historians who study the fall of Otranto call the martyrdom of the 800 one of the most consequential acts of collective resistance in the medieval world. It did not produce a military victory in the tactical sense. It produced something rarer, a moral reversal. The city had fallen, the walls had failed, the garrison had been overcome, and yet the battle was lost by the attacker, because the 800 found the one ground no army can take by force. In a world that constantly asks us to accommodate, to compromise, to find a practical middle ground between principle and survival, their answer was always the same. No. Simply no. Not complicated, not negotiated. No. Ordinary people remember them differently than scholars do. They remember Antonio Primaldo, the old tailor, standing upright after the sword fell. Grandmothers in Puglia still know his name. Children in Otranto learn the Hill of Minerva before they learn geography. The specific image that survives in folk memory is not the battle, not the fleet, not the cannons. It is one old man, kneeling in the sunlight, refusing to fall. If you want to explore more of these forgotten moments, the battles that changed history's course, the ordinary people who bent the arc of civilizations with nothing but will and faith, this channel exists for exactly that. The next story is already waiting. Gedik Ahmed Pasha was eventually withdrawn from Italy when Mehmed II died in 1481, ending that particular Ottoman campaign. The 800 were beatified by Pope Clement XIV in 1771 and canonized by Pope Francis on May 12, 2013. The last survivor of the resistance reportedly lived long enough to see the cathedral reconsecrated. His deathbed words, as recorded in the tradition that carried them forward, were spoken to a young priest who asked what he wanted to be remembered for. "I was in the cathedral. Tell them we were not afraid at the end." The wind still moves through the Pulian hills in the same direction it moved on the 12th of August, 1480. The limestone cliffs still catch the morning light of the Adriatic the same way they caught it that day. The Hill of Minerva is quiet. It has always been quiet. the particular quiet of a place that remembers things that cannot be written on stone, because stone is not permanent enough. Empires rise and empires pass. Armies march and armies dissolve into the long silence of history. But the 800 who knelt on that hill, who answered one question with one word, who turned a defeat into something that outlasted every army that tried to answer it, they are still there. In the wind, in the light. In every person who has ever faced an impossible choice and found somewhere beneath the fear the same answer. Defiance does not die, it waits.